they would either swap it with a unit from another plane, or often they would only do a basic cleaning of the malfunctioning unit.
They just pull up the connectors, spray it with some lubricant cleaners, then put it back on, did some ground test, and then just put ground test OK on the maintenance log.
Since the IRS is such a vital piece of equipment, this is contrary to all recommended repair policies. Investigators listened to the cockpit voice recorder, hoping to discover how the malfunctioning IRS contributed to the crash.
This is crazy! We're going to get lost if it stays like this.
Don't turn it! This is our heading! Pull up! Pull up!
But nothing they hear leads them to believe that an IRS malfunction alone could have caused the plane to crash.
If you have a failure in one system of the airplane, it shouldn't cause an accident.
Investigators now wonder if the severe storm Flight 574 flew into somehow played a role in this crash.
This is messed up. This is really messed up. It's starting to fly like a bamboo ship. Confirm our position.
Weather is a well-known cause of airline accidents. In order to determine if weather was a factor in the Adamair crash, investigators need a more complete picture of what happened on board the flight. They want to know everything the crew did and said from the time they discovered that they were off course to the time they hit the water. To do this, they combine the data from the two black boxes to create a computer simulation of the flight.
That gives us very close to the possibility of what really happened with the aircraft.
Investigators return to Jakarta to study the simulation. They can see that throughout most of the flight, the computer was navigating the plane. But since the flight computer was sending the plane off course, the captain decided to navigate the plane himself.
Okay, put the IRS in attitude.
Co-pilot Susanto switched the navigation system to a mode that would keep the plane flying straight and level. Captain Widodo could now change his course.
This is where they switch from nav to attitude.
Switching from one mode to the other forces some computerized gauges to temporarily go blank while they reset. One is the ADI, or Artificial Horizon, which tells the crew if the plane is flying level.
ADI goes off and stays off.
There was also another much more serious consequence to the switch.
That's where the plane starts its right roll.
The autopilot disengaged when they consciously selected from the nav mode to the attitude mode, and then the aircraft commenced an almost imperceptible roll to the right of around about 1 degree per second.
The captain missed a crucial step when he switched his flight computer from one mode to the other.
Quick reference handbook, please.
He should have flown his plane straight and level while the computer adjusted to the new setting.
Maintain straight and level constant airspeed flight until attitude displays recover. Approximately 30 seconds. It's in the manual.
Any pilot who is trained and qualified on the Boeing 737-400 is regarded to have a sufficient knowledge that whenever they switch the nav mode to attitude, they have to maintain wings level for 30 seconds.
But neither of the pilots did that. It's an oversight with grave consequences. Without that step, the autopilot disengages completely. The flight computer did send out a warning when that happened, but the warning was ignored. The crew didn't seem to notice that the autopilot was no longer flying the plane. At and it only took seconds for that to become a very serious problem. The data tells investigators that this plane had a natural tendency to roll to the right. Old planes, like old cars, don't always go straight. Throughout the flight, the autopilot compensated for that by raising the aileron on the plane's left wing. An aileron is a movable flap on the wing that controls how much the plane rolls to the left and right. But once the autopilot disengaged, it stopped compensating and the ailerons went back to a neutral position. That allowed the plane to revert to its tendency to roll to the right.
And they don't even notice.
At this point, the plane was rolling at a rate of 1 degree per second. Focused on their faulty navigation system, and with thick clouds obscuring the horizon, the pilots had no idea that their plane was dipping. It's not uncommon for pilots to get disoriented in this way.
Your body will start to fool you. Your senses will start sending you false information or false senses. You might think that you are actually going straight and level, where you're actually rolling slowly to the right or to the left.
The 737 is programmed to issue a warning when it rolls past 35 degrees.
Bank angle, bank angle, bank angle.
The flight data recorder shows investigators that in response to that alert, Captain Widodo did attempt to level the plane.
They get an oral warning from the airplane that says, hey, bank angle, bank angle. And at that point, they made some small inputs to the controls, but they didn't fly the airplane.
Believing that the autopilot would keep the plane level, Widodo soon turned his attention back to the problematic IRS.
When the pilot engrossed with troubleshooting of the IRS, their ability to pay attention for the other tasks is reduced. Further, these IRS anomalies has become the only priority at the moment.
Usually you would say one pilot deals with the system issue, the other pilot flies the airplane. They were both dealing with this system issue and totally focused on the issue, so they never saw what was happening.
This is not the first accident involving what we would call spatial disorientation.
It was almost 3 years earlier to the day that another flight, Flash Airlines 604, taking off over the Red Sea, had a similar fate.
See what the aircraft just did?
Distracted by a malfunctioning component in the cockpit, the captain may have become disoriented.
Autopilot! Autopilot!
Like the Adam Air flight, the captain's attention was focused on his flight computer. And like the Adam Air flight, his plane began rolling dangerously to the right. Investigators concluded that without any external references, the captain simply couldn't tell that his plane was falling from the sky.
Tragically, just because there is an initial reference system failure, or let's say in another accident there might be an engine failure, does not mean that an aircraft has to crash.
It's 60 degrees now and there's no attempt at a recovery.
Don't turn it! This is our heading!
Pull out!
Pull out!
Investigators can see that when Captain Widodo does take action, he makes the situation much worse. With his plane still banked drastically to the right, Captain Widodo should have leveled his wings and then pulled his nose up. He did the opposite. He began pulling back on his control column before his wings were level. That forced the plane into a tight spiral dive.
Basically, it rolled and it just kept rolling until it almost went inverted and just kind of fell out of the sky once it got to a point where it wasn't flying like a normal airplane should.
The aircraft was descending at nearly 900 kilometres an hour, at a vertical speed at times reaching in excess of 21,000 feet per minute.
That's almost the speed of sound, and more than 100